Hello, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about Robin Redbreast. Now, Robin Redbreast, as you can see here, is a BBC teleplay. It was made for a show called A Play for Today that started in 1970 and was successful and went all the way through 1984. I've heard from some friends over in the UK that a lot of these are very good. And this one in particular, which was part of the first season, was very highly rated and well liked by a lot of other people I've seen do written reviews. I don't really know why. It's very boring to me. As I was watching it, it was very hard to not turn it off, but I stuck with it. And basically nothing happens in the first half hour. It's just a woman who seems to be an older lady. Seems like she's probably in her late 40s, early 50s. She recently went through a breakup. She lived in London with her boyfriend. Now she's moved out to the countryside. And, she's got some money. She hires a maid. Maid helps her out. Has neighbors over. They talk about nothing interesting or important for about half an hour. Then half an hour later, into the movie, she meets this guy named Robin Redbreast, or Robin. And she decides to invite him over for dinner. Then it starts to get slightly more interesting. He comes over for dinner, and it turns out he's very, very socially awkward, and all he wants to talk about the whole time is the SS, World War II Nazis. So she's not really into that. She goes and decides to ask him to leave because she says she's tired. She says she needs to go to bed. He says, time for bed, eh? He thinks that she's inviting him to bed. She says, no, that's not what I mean. Just go home. He becomes upset. He leaves. Then a bird flies down her chimney and she gets scared. And he happens to be outside and runs inside to help her, to protect her from the bird. Well, apparently this was such a noble act that she decides to sleep with him, which is stupid. And then she decides, she can't find her contraceptive material, cup, I think it is. It's not a condom, it's something else that I don't think people use anymore. It's like a female contraceptive. Can't find it. And she has sex with him anyway. Then she's pregnant. Then she wants to get an abortion. Then he says, no, don't get an abortion. And she said, are you going to be the dad? He's like, well, I'm moving to Canada, so I can't really do that. And she's like, yeah, I'm just going to abort it. Then weird stuff happens. This is where it kind of becomes a horror movie. It becomes a psychological thriller about halfway through because her car stops working, then her phone stops working, and then she realizes that people are keeping her inside her house and not letting her go get an abortion. And so she really wants to get out. She can't get out. This guy, Robin's always creeping around outside her house. She won't let him in. He wants to get in. It's a little bit creepy. Probably in 1970, especially for a TV movie, it was creepier than it seems to be now. I imagine that it could be scarier for someone who has been in this situation, I guess. Overall, it's not what most of us would think of when we think of a horror movie, except, as it turns out, at the end, it ends up becoming a Rosemary's Baby ripoff. It's like the same exact thing that happened in Rosemary's Baby, except it's not anywhere near as interesting. It's not as well acted. I mean, it is a TV movie, but still. And so, as it turns out, in the end, spoiler alert, although I would be shocked if you went and watched this movie, as it turns out, a satanic well, actually, it may not be satanic, but some kind of cult, it might be a pagan cult, has determined that they need her baby. I think her name's Anna. They need her baby. So this could be called Anna's baby instead of Rosemary's baby. They need her baby because they're going to do some kind of ritual with it or whatever. The only difference between this and Rosemary's baby is that the guy, Robin, is not in on it. Whereas in Rosemary's baby, hopefully you've seen that, but in Rosemary's baby, the husband ends up being in on the plot. Rosemary's Baby is so much better than this. Anyway, that's pretty much it. It does count as horror because it has a pagan cult, and it is like a psychological thriller horror type thing for the second half of it. But the first half is ultra dull. They probably could have got the whole thing across in 45 minutes, but even still, it would just be a Rosemary's Baby ripoff. So, not impressed. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10 because it is not original. It's not well done. It's boring. Also, if you want to watch it, you have to watch it in black and white because apparently the colorized version of this has been lost. Even though it was originally in color, now you have to watch it in black and white, which, especially considering the director did not intend for it to be in black and white, is definitely a negative. All right, before we go, we are going to quickly talk about this movie, which has a really sweet poster. This is another British movie. It's called Tam Lin. It's also known as the Ballad of Tam Lin. I was excited for this because look at that poster. It looks awesome. It looks exciting. It looks crazy. What's this guy even holding over here? A scepter? That mask is sweet. Everything about this looks cool. There's this beautiful woman on there. Okay? It says down here, they called her the Devil's Widow. Now, I'm not giving this its own video because it's not. I don't consider it a horror movie, though it does have a horror element at the very end. And I also wanted to pair it with Robin Redbreast because they're very similar. They're both British. They're both super boring. And they're both not really horror movies until the end. So they go well together. This movie is based off of a Scottish folktale about a woman who drains men. But really, it's like drains them of their, I don't know, free will, I guess. Basically, there's this woman, she's slightly older, and then there's a man who like is her lover but doesn't love her, and then he falls in love with a younger woman, and then she like prevents him from seeing her, I guess you could say. This movie is an hour and 45 minutes long, and nothing cool happens until the last 10 or 15 minutes. And then when I say cool, that's like a relative term. It is so boring. It's just a romance film, but not even a well-done one. And it's so boring. And then all of a sudden, in the last 10 or 15 minutes, it turns into a surreal psychological horror thriller out of nowhere. The last 10 to 15 minutes, I mean, I was kind of mentally checked out by the end, but basically it didn't really make sense to me. It was just weird stuff happening. Pretty much all this is from the last 10 to 15 minutes. Like, the first hour and a half is just talking. The mask is a brief masquerade party happening in the middle of the movie. Nothing like significant about that mask. Okay, so this one is a major flop. I think I would give it a 2 out of 10 just because like it's a competent production, but it is super boring. So if we look at all our movies, I think about 6 or 7 of the mentioned movies of this year have been British. And none of them have been that good. I know in later years, we're going to get some great British horror, but 1970, all the British horror was super tame. I know censorship was very strong in the UK. I know that they banned a lot of movies there, demanded major cuts. They censored more than the US, and certainly more than other countries. If you look at the German, Japanese, and Filipino movies that we've talked about, they are way more explicit than any of the American or British stuff of 1970. So that's where we're finding the good stuff at this point in time. All right, that's enough about this. Oh no, I gotta tell you 2 more things. This was directed by Roddy McDowall. Roddy McDowall plays Cornelius in the Planet of the Apes movies. In fact, he plays Cornelius in all, I think, 5 of the original Planet of the Apes movies, except for the second one, which he could not do because he was busy directing this. This is the only movie that he ever directed. And if you're not a Planet of the Apes fan, he also was in Fright Night, which was an amazing vampire movie from the mid-'80s, 1985, I think. And he played a horror host in Fright Night. So Roddy McDowall is the director here in 1970. Guess that there's a reason why he only directed one movie, because it was really bad. All right. The other thing I wanted to say is that woman in the first movie, let's go back, and Robin Redbreast, this actually offended me a little bit, because this woman had to be, I mean, she looked like she was at least 50. She acted really old, even compared to other movies from 1970. She said she's 35 in the movie. I'm like, man, I'm 36. I hope I don't appear that way to other people, be like that old and crusty. All right, that's it. See you next time.